all kinds of conspiratorial ideologies out there. But today I want to focus a little bit on the conspiracy theory network that I like to call the tough on crime ideology. You ever meet these guys? They're tough on crime. You ever meet them? Tough on crime. You hear this a lot on Fox News. You hear this a lot on MSNBC, on all kinds of mainstream media. Tough on crime. But really, it doesn't mean anything. There's really no such, there's no definition of tough on crime. Because there's two words in this three-word phrase that are undefined. That is tough. How are you or someone else or a politician being tough? And crime. How do we define crime? Well, in the 1990s, crime was defined as, are you gay? If so, crime. That's a crime. Crime was defined as, are you black? Yep, all right, that's a crime. You're a crime. Crime is defined as, what kind of things do you put in your body? Crime, that's a crime. Let's lock them up. Right, so again, the definition of crime is really important. And so this following news story here, we're really going to get into what the definition of crime means and why and how these so-called tough on crime politicians are able to get away with pretending that they're tough on crime when, again, let's take a look at police brutality. I would wager that since 2022 had the most police murders, I'm talking about police murdering citizens of this country, the most police murders of any year on record. Is that tough on crime? So Joe Biden is elected president. In 2021, he triples local police department funding. That's what he did. He tripled the funding for local police departments. So now there's more cops than ever on the streets. Just so happens that at the same time, the next year, now that we've got more cops on the street, we have a record number of police murders. Again, not police being murdered, which is impossible to do because murder is a definition that requires the person being killed to be a human being. Police are not human, therefore it's not possible to murder a police officer. But what I mean when I say police murder is, of course, police murdering real human beings, which is, by the way, illegal. That's a crime. So again, when we talk about tough on crime, we really need to have understanding of what our definitions are. We need to define our terms. And so I'm going to get into this news story here. Joe Biden signs a measure to repeal controversial D.C. crime bill. What? So for those of you that don't know, Washington, D.C., which is not a state, technically is allowed in some ways to be governed by the United States. So the Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, has its own city council, municipal kind of government, and they decide laws. But the United States, the federal agency, the federal body, is able to basically veto what the district puts up. So in other words, Joe Biden is vetoing the D.C. Council's criminal reform bill, whatever it is. But why is that? Well, the answer is tough on crime, tough on crime, tough on crime. So let's read this article. President Joe Biden on Monday signed a measure repealing changes to the D.C. criminal code, breaking with the progressive wing of his party and taking a tough on crime stance ahead of his expected re-election bid. Tough on crime. Letting police get away with killing people, that's tough on crime. Making sure homeless people are thrown in jail just for being homeless, tough on crime. Making sure someone who's poor, right, and can't pay for something, and let's say for rent, so that you can send police to go bash their door in and throw them on the street, that's tough on crime, right? in this Twilight Zone-esque hell world that we live in. Earlier this month, the Senate overwhelmingly passed the GOP-backed measure. Think about this one. So the GOP put this measure together. Democrats pushed it through the Senate. Tough on crime. Tough on crime. Tough on crime. We're going to be tough on crime. Give the Republicans some talking points so we're tough on crime. Yeah! Tough on crime. Quote, I support D.C. statehood and home rule, but I don't support some of the changes D.C. Council put forward over the mayor's objections, such as lowering penalties for carjackings, Biden wrote in a tweet. Now, it's interesting that we talk about carjackings, right? But again, this is in the same way I covered this earlier. Joe Biden does not believe in climate change. He said, climate change is real. We got to trust the science. As he approves the Willow project, which is a 30-year oil drilling project. 30 years. What's 2023 plus 30? Seems like it exceeds his 2050 goal of net zero or whatever the fuck, or zero oil. Seems like it exceeds that goal. So again, if to do that would require not believing in climate change, right? So he says, I support DC statehood and home rule, but he doesn't. He signed into law something that contradicts that. Now, it's one thing. All right, you don't like the criminal code reform that DC passed. You don't like it. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. You support DC statehood and home rule, right? I disagree with their criminal code reform, but I support their right to govern themselves. You cannot support DC statehood or DC home rule if you're going to be stepping in and vetoing anything you don't like about how they govern their own district. It's not possible. It's not possible. So again, he's lying. This is a common politician tactic. They lie all the time, but this is he's contradicting himself in one sentence. Anyone who can't see this, that can't see that this guy is a fucking lying goofball, is a dumb fuck motherfucker. But again, he specifically mentioned carjackings. Okay? Put a pin in that. Carjackings. Keep that on your brain somewhere, okay? Let's keep going. Late last year, the Council of the District of Columbia overhauled the city's criminal code for the first time in a century. What is a century? 100 years. The bill would have shifted Washington's approach to crime, eliminating most mandatory minimum sentences. That's good. Mandatory minimums are trash, my opinion. But again, pin in the carjackings. And reducing mandatory maximum penalties, which I also agree with. Mayor Muriel Bowser had opposed the changes. By the way, Muriel Bowser, who did she endorse in 2020? Mike Bloomberg, just have to remind everyone. Saying they would not make the nation's capital safer, but she called on Congress, which has the authority to review legislation the city passes, not to interfere with the district's sovereignty. So again, that's what I was saying. You don't like it. Okay, that's fine. I don't like all kinds of things that are going on in all kinds of places in the world. That doesn't mean that I'm going to step in and fuck their shit up. And if I were to step in and fuck their shit up, you know what I wouldn't say? I support their right to statehood and home rule while I'm fucking their shit up. I would just say, I disagree with this. Fuck them. Yeah, if they want to be their own state, whatever. They're not. Fuck them. But Joe Biden is speaking out of both sides of his mouth for some fucking reason. And he's saying he supports their sovereignty, but also doesn't support their sovereignty at the same fucking time. At a rally before the Senate voted on the measure, Eleanor Holmes Norton, D.C.'s non-voting delegate to the House, called the legislation an attack on home rule. Quote, we have come together today with one simple message for Congress and President Biden. Keep your hands off of D.C., said Norton, a Democrat, You either support DC's home rule or you don't. I agree. There are no exceptions, and there is no middle ground on DC's right to self-government. After Biden's announcement, D.C. Council Chair Phil Mendelson attempted to withdraw the measure from Congress and fend off its repeal. But Senate leadership aides said it was too late to retract the measure. Several Senate Democrats rejected the resolution, affirming their support for D.C. statehood and arguing that it merely brought the city's criminal code in line with other states. Again, you have that pin on carjackings, right? Keep your eyes there. Chris Murphy from Connecticut. Now again, Chris Murphy, not perfect. Quote, it lowers the carjacking maximum to 24 years. That is in line with many states, he wrote, and the bill increases sentences for attempted murder, sexual assault, misdemeanor sexual abuse, and many other crimes. When you actually read the bill, this is from Cory Booker, compare it to the criminal code of other states, it is stunning to me how somehow this has been perverted and distorted to be seen as something that is some kind of lax loosening of penalties on people doing bad things. Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey said at a caucus meeting. So, what did Joe Biden say? Again, let's scroll up. Lowering penalties for carjackings. That's why he is lying about his support for DC statehood and giving Republicans a win. This is what I told everyone. When Republicans won the House, Joe Biden is just going to pass all of their garbage anyway. They're going to do a couple of tweaks, change the capitalization and punctuation a little bit, and then they're going to call it bipartisan. Bipartisan. So, again, carjacking, this new, not old, new criminal code, the maximum for carjacking, 24 years. 24 years. That's what Joe Biden is worried about. That someone might get 24 years in jail instead of 30 for stealing a car. Tough on crime. Tough on crime. Is it really tough on crime to want someone to spend 24, more than 24, like 30 years in jail for stealing a car? Now, again, stealing a car is a crime. And again, we should punish criminals, right? Sure. But 24 years in a steel and cement cage with a bunch of actual criminals, right? Because you stole a car? Like, does that make sense? Tell me, in what world? 24 years doesn't make sense, right? I'd say the mandatory maximum for carjacking should be, 6 months. That's my opinion. But again, that's my opinion, okay? But we're talking about here, Joe Biden thinks 24 years in fucking prison is too lax. It's soft on crime to send someone to a cement steel cage for 24 years for stealing a car. Soft on crime. So again, back to what I was saying at the start of this segment here. What the fuck are the definitions of our terms? What does soft and tough mean? And what is crime? I think we can all agree. Stealing a car should be a crime? Sure. But the idea that the solution to that, the punishment for that, is 24 years in a cemented steel cage instead of, rehabilitation? Like, imagine, why would someone steal a car? Think about what would lead somebody to stealing a car. Like, is motherfucking, Pablo Escobar stealing cars? Is goddamn Al Capone going out there stealing some cars? Tell me, what criminal mastermind and, super evil crime lord is going to go out there and steal a fucking car, right? Let's be real, okay? The people that are stealing cars, probably poor. Now, again, it's a crime. They shouldn't do it. But if you want to fight carjackings, what you would do, end poverty. Poor people, are likely to be stealing cars. What do they do with it? They find any of the valuables in there. Maybe they sell it to somebody. Maybe they strip parts out of it, something and so on, just for some extra cash. If you want to fight carjackings, what you would do is increase the social safety net so that people are never in a position where they are so impoverished that the only way they can even think about making it through to the next month is by stealing someone's car. But even then, people will obviously continue to steal cars. So instead of sending them to a cement steel cage for 24 years, 24 fucking years, like, I need you to, like, I am 26 years old, okay? That's my entire life, nearly, that someone could be spending in jail because they stole a car, right? And now again, in prison, have you seen the quality of our prisons in this country? Not only is it a cement steel cage, but the people in prison are violent. Prison culture is extremely violent, and the United States does nothing about it. In fact, the United States boasts how poorly they regulate their prisons. I'm sure we've all heard the popular meme of "don't drop the soap." Why? Well, because you'll get raped. Because rape is normal in prison. Why? You're telling me these armed guards and thugs with guns and tasers can't stop prisoners from being raped? No, that's a feature of prison. Now, it would be illegal if the prisoner guards themselves were the ones raping the prisoners. So what they do is they just turn a blind eye while the prisoners rape each other, brutalize each other, murder each other, shiv each other, kill each other. For what? Now imagine if we switched that whole system into a rehabilitation program. Instead of stealing a car and getting sent to a fucking box for 24 years, getting raped, or having to rape other people to show dominance, right, to survive, or maybe having to kill people in gang initiation, so on and so forth. What if instead of that, we taught people how to balance a checkbook? We taught people how to design a resume. We taught people, I don't know, how to program code so that they could get a job when they are out of prison. What if we spent our money on that so that people would never feel the need to jack another car again? But wouldn't that be soft on crime? I argue it's not. It would be tough on crime. But again, you never hear these tough on crime motherfuckers talking about actual criminals, right? Like, is Merrick Garland, Joe Biden's attorney general, going to arrest Donald Trump for, I don't know, an insurrection against the United States? What we're talking about is a fucking local district attorney might arrest him. Probably not, let's be honest. Probably not, but might arrest him for a campaign finance violation from fucking like 10 years ago. Not even like 8 years ago, 7 years ago. That's the best we got. So tough on Mr. Tough on Crime, Joe Biden. The biggest criminal in the country, the most famous, popular criminal in the country, Donald Trump. You can't get him on an insurrection that he fronted. He caused a fucking insurrection against the United States of America, and you're not going to do anything about it, but you want to tell me you're tough on crime? Really? Really, you're tough on crime? What about all these fucking dipshit bankers? Like, what about Peter Thiel? Peter Thiel took all of his money out of the Silicon Valley Bank. He's fine. And then he initiated a bank run. Destroyed the whole fucking thing. And then got a bailout. A bailout. A federal bailout. What about these criminals? Are we going to be tough on these criminals? What about these health insurance, so-called health insurance executives that make money off of killing people? They deny people necessary health coverage, and then those people, because they couldn't go to a doctor, drop dead. What about those criminals? And so on and so forth. But again, whenever you hear the term tough on crime, chances are the person who is saying the term tough on crime, they're just not very bright. They're kind of a dumb motherfucker. But really, again, Americans are so fucking goddamn stupid that we're gonna let these fucking obvious criminals walk all over us, lock us in cages for stealing a car, while they are gonna lecture us about how good they are on crime? Really? Really? But hey, what are you gonna do? So